So, life is always about trying to find aligned action. So, we talked about this like in the last video to try to act from that place within, that place of inception and calmness and knowing um, what next steps you'd like to take. And the earth and the seasons all have a rhythmic cycling to it where all of the consciousnesses of the planet, like the water and the trees and the air and the earth and the flowers and the animals, know when it's time to shift consciousness into the new cycle. And we, as busy bodies, have forgotten or don't necessarily go in the direction of the cycles of Gaia and even our own rhythms. So technology and transportation and logistics has made it so that you can eat an orange or a strawberry or any other exotic fruits that don't necessarily grow in your environment, but you can ingest them anyways. And the same thing for like having air conditioning. We don't necessarily feel the heat of our environment. And what that does is that it creates obviously a barrier or a limitation with our environment. We don't necessarily meld and are in conscious vibration with the environment around us. And we, in the same way that we either shield our bodies from the temperature and don't necessarily ingest the foods of the seasons or the nutriments of the seasons, we do the same thing with our minds. And so we don't live from that place within the heart, where the heart beats. We live in our minds where we decide to dictate and take dominance over our natural rhythms. And of course, what that does is that it creates a state of imbalance. And so we have to trust in our natural rhythms. And the more we trust in them, the more prosperous, the more prosperous, thank you. The more prosperous we'll be. It's ethereal, like cereal. Yeah, so the more prosperous we'll be because we won't be limiting our natural flow with the mental chatter and our thinking and our beliefs. So, fall. I'm thinking that, you know, having the summer offs was in relation in relationship with the natural occurrence of the seasons. And so, you know, in the fall, school starts up again and summer's kind of over and people are getting back into the windy busyness of their lives. And that's all well and good. And then like the hibernation of the winter, and then the springing up of spring again, and then the sort of slowing down and enjoying of the summer. Those are the natural rhythms of the planet and of the seasons. And yet we often don't follow these rhythms. We're sort of busy all year round, and we don't really necessarily stop to enjoy just being and just living. And so we fixate on an idea rather than an ideal. And we get lost in the duality of whatever we created mentally. So, for example, we'll chase the idea of money, or we'll chase the idea of security, or we'll chase the idea of a certain relationship or sex or food, but we don't necessarily contemplate the ideal behind those ideas. And so we sort of we kind of have it backwards, right? Because we're working towards an idea, and then once we've attained that idea or are close to it, then it sort of ends and you're not necessarily happier or more at ease once you've gotten what you wanted. So for example, let's say you want more money or you want to get rich and you have a certain plateau of, let's say, $1 million. And then you reach that $1 million, and then you're like, well, then what? And so when we focus on an idea rather than an ideal, so an ideal could be, feeling at peace or feeling loving. And then from that ideal, découle, brings down the different ideas in which you can express them. And so the ideal of the different rhythms and the different cycles is harmony and balance, and getting a taste for the different winds and the different earths and the different fires in order to feel and express the ideal of balance and harmony. And so in the same way that trying to find that place within is trying to find your ideal for living your life. What is the ideal that will bring you all of the ideas and experiences or life experiences that will make you perpetuate that sense of ideal or that love or that peace or that harmony? And so fall is, like every other season, a season of exploration. It's exploring the winds and the changing of the colors and feeling the crisp air and remembering other falls by the smell and the animals getting a little furrier and putting on their coats starting to put on their coats for the winter. And it's experiencing all of the different facets of that season with the warm lattes and the comfortable clothing and the warm potatoy foods, changing a little bit of the rhythms of our sleep. It's darker a little later, I think, and it gets darker earlier in the evening, reflecting on the essence of the season and the ideal or the archetype of that season, and experiencing it through the different ideas. Same goes for the sphere of our life. And so you have, a sphere for the season and the sphere of your life that parallels, where you are right now and what's the next step according to how you feel and what your environment is reflecting, in order for you to have the experience or the life experience of the different ideas, in order to evolve and perpetuate your highest ideal. It's about vibrating in harmony with the frequency of your natural environment. And the same goes for your being and yourself. It's about vibrating to the frequency of the essence of who you are by exploring the different life experiences that come to you. Life is meant to be comfortable. Life is meant to flow, like the in-breath and the out-breath. Life is not meant to be forced or held back, because if you force your breath, you'll get anxious. And if you deny your breath, well, you get dizzy and you might die. And so life is the same way. It's to be in constant harmony with the flow of yourself, your environment, and the laws of the universe. I'm getting also that it's trying to not limit or block this flow. So, for example, at this time of year, a lot of people will judge or have an opinion on the fact that it's getting colder and, winter's coming and there's less light outside. And, to look at the negative side of the regular cycles or the natural cycles is, well, essentially it's pretty much going against nature. And it's going against your nature as well. So trying to control by having an opinion or judging what's happening in nature or looking at it from the negative side, you'll get out of balance, obviously, because it's, your body is there in that season, for example, but your mind doesn't want to be. And when there's a mental split between your mind and your body, you're not completely aligned with the source of who you are or the source of nature, and therefore experience things that are uncomfortable or frustrations. And so, it comes back to trying to see the positive side of things, or like what this season and cycle can bring for you. It's like, people who constantly complain about the weather. You know, it's either too hot or too cold or too damp or too dry, or when you're in disharmony with the natural cycles of your body or your environment, for example, like menopause, or for us women, or your period, or, you know, when your mental body or your mental chatter goes against your natural cycles, there's a fundamental um, fissure that happens between who you want to be and who you truly are. And until you can reconcile who you are and who you want to be, um, there'll always be some resistance. So let's try to always fall back on our natural rhythms and the laws of the universe. Because once we're in harmony with those, life gets easier and life gets simpler.